All right. Good evening, everyone. We want to thank you for joining us. There's going to be more folks that join along the way, and that's okay. I want to thank all of you for joining us for the first Veteran to PA informational session. We have representatives from Duke, UNC, and University of Washington medics participating this evening. It will be a question and answer session. And the first hour will be general questions about the transition from service to PA school. And the second hour will be school-specific questions. Thank you to those who have pre-submitted questions ahead of time. And if you have any questions during the session, we would ask that you use the chat feature. Due to time, we will likely not be able to get all of the questions submitted by the chat feature, but for those that we weren't able to get to, I will personally respond by email and get back to you and answer every question. I'd like to start by introducing our panel. I'll go ahead and start myself. My name is Mike Steigerwald, and I'm the Veteran Liaison with the Duke PA program. I am a veteran myself, former 68 Whiskey, having one tour in Baghdad for all of 2004. And then I'd like to go ahead and just go down the line, and I'll introduce Duke's program director, Dr. Jacqueline Barnett.
Good, Jacqueline Barnett. Thank you everyone for being here. We're very, very excited to be able to share information with you about our various programs and to hope to continue to pique your interest into the PA profession. I'm again a PA, I've been a PA for 27 years. I'm a previous commissioned officer in the public health service. All the men in my family were veterans, and I've taken care of many of veterans at various Air Force bases, including Bowling, Andrews, most of the bases in and around the DC area. So strongly committed to this purpose and cause. And we hope that you get all the information that you can tonight to really help support your transition and interest in the PA profession.
And then I'm just going to go down the line and introduce Mr. Dale Robertson.
Yeah, my name is Dale Robertson. I'm a associate program director at the University of Washington Medics program, and I'm also a Army veteran, honorably discharged 4 years. Welcome.
And then next is Mr. Jason Erdina.
Hi, I'm Jason Erdina. I am Director of Clinical Education over at the UNC PA program. I'm a Air Force and Army veteran of over 20 years. 6 years as a medic and over 14 years as a PA.
Great, thanks. And then next is Miss Wendy Elwell-Page.
I'm Wendy Elwell-Page. I'm Assistant Director of Admissions at the Duke PA program, and I have been doing admissions at Duke in some form or capacity for 27 years.
Great. And Tovi Blake.
Hi, everyone. Again, Tovi Blake from MedX Northwest, and I'm the Assistant Director for Admissions and Student Services. I have not spent any time in the service.
Thanks, Tovi. Next, Miss Jennifer Erickson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Erickson. I'm from MedX Northwest up in Washington State. So I started out as an Army medic in 2003, a 68 Whiskey, although it was 91 Whiskey back then, I think. I must have missed you, Mike, because I was in Balad in 2004 and 2005.
So close.
I know, we brushed by each other, I think. And then I went straight into direct commission into being an officer. So I've been an Army PA since 2010. Just hit my 18-year birthday 3 months ago, and I think I'll probably do that forever and ever. I'm also the site director of the Tacoma campus of the UW MedX program.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Tracy Velez.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Tracy Velez, and I'm with the UNC Chapel Hill PA program. I am basically the admissions chair for the program and handle all of the business and student services affairs with students as they onboard and transition through the program. I am a military spouse of 8 years, 8 months, and I find that I have a lot of desire to help the transition to civilian life because I find my husband had a hard time, and so I can totally relate.
Thank you. And Mr. Sean Reyes.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm a second year PA student at Duke. I did 9 years in the Navy. I was a corpsman, primarily green side.
Thanks, Sean. All right, and now we're just going to go ahead and dive right into the questions. And as we said before, if there's any on-the-fly questions that you might have for any of us, please utilize the chat feature and we'll try and respond to them. So we're going to start with Dr. Barnett. And the first question that came in was, does being a veteran help or hurt my application?
I think generally speaking, being a veteran very much helps your application. I can definitely speak to that. At Duke, we have a preference for veterans in our program. And so generally, I think across all, being a veteran helps your application.
Great. And is a certain major or concentration required or even suggested to get accepted into PA school?
So generally speaking, nope. I'm not aware of any program that's saying that you have to have a certain major, but there are majors that many programs sort of prefer. Often some that where you've taken a good amount of science-based credits to help prepare for some of those science courses. So I think some that are, science-based courses are really good. Biology majors tend to be good. Nursing majors tend to be good. Each year we get like exercise science sort of as another major that I think we get a lot of. And I think any of the majors that are some form of health professions, even social work, I think is a good one, but one that will allow you to take, that you have a good sense of some of the science and the science background, I would say would be preferred.
Great. And then this is more of a COVID specific question, but in general, do you see virtual interviews still happening moving forward?
I think that's a really good question. I would like to hear, as our other panelists and other institutions represented, their thought on this as well. So I actually see virtual interviews in some way, shape, or form potentially hanging around a little bit, either in a hybrid or all. I can tell you the Duke PA program with our Ms. Wendy Elwell Page on, we are going to keep it 100% virtual this upcoming year for admissions. So that's sort of my thought, and others may want to chime in.
Speaking for MEDEX, we will be conducting virtual interviews for the next application cycle, so 2022, but no decision has been made beyond that yet.
At UNC, we will have virtual interviews this year as well, and we think that we may continue this for some applicants, especially those applying from out of state.
One of the things, if I may, Mike, just to do that, one of the things for us for Duke, we really, like some of the other programs represented, we really have a mission around underserved populations, and we thought that the virtual admissions really helped with some of the financial aspects that many of our applicants would have in terms of having to pay for flights to different programs and hotel stays. And we really thought that making it virtual really helped supported those who may not have all the financial resources as other applicants. So that was one of our key areas for really thinking about keeping it virtual, at least for this year.
Great. Yeah, it's certainly been a unique year. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Mr. Robertson with kind of bringing it back to the basics. And how the heck do we apply to PA school? So
each school has its individual requirements. So I know CASPA is involved in that. We can speak to our individual school. So I wanted to ask Toby, who's basically our admissions person, if she could actually handle that one for me.
Sure. Thanks, Dale. So folks, CASPA stands for the Centralized Application System or Service for Physician Assistants. And regardless of whichever program you're interested in applying to, that's where you apply. And I'll actually put the link to the site in the chat room. Each program launches their application cycle at their own unique times. It's generally in the spring of each year. Like for MEDEX, we are launching on May 1st of this year, and it will be closing on October 1st.
Great, thank you. And then back to Mr. Robertson. So the question that came in was, I know that programs vary, But what is the overall thought regarding gaining a bachelor's and other prerequisites online versus in person, as well as community college versus the university level?
In regards to the prerequisites, whether they're online or whether they're in person, I don't think that really holds a lot of weight, at least with our school. It depends on you actually meeting the prerequisites, and we take a look at the GPA. Our school, the GPA matters, but not as much as it is at other places. So I think that if you're looking to apply to PA school, you probably should do a little homework and kind of figuring which schools actually have more of a focus on which things. In regards to the bachelor's as opposed to the master's, we graduated our last class last year, our previous class, that certain students have the opportunity to possibly graduate with a bachelor's degree, but all of our current students are going to be graduating with a master's. So I think that's the trend. I can't speak for all schools, but I think most, if not all, schools are actually trending in that direction. So if you don't know for sure, I would probably say to you, focus on trying to get your bachelor's degree before you apply, because if nothing else, I don't think it would hurt you.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And then the last question here is, for someone with average grades, what can I do to make my application stand out?
Well, what I would say, since we're talking to a bunch of veterans here, and I definitely used that when I applied to the program, and I knew that MEDEX, had this passion for military personnel, because those were, our first class of people we had at the school. I think that if what you want to do is using your military background, but also using any strong points that you have in your background. Also, do your homework, depending on which school it is you're applying to, what it is they focus on. But MEDEX doesn't have this super strong focus on your GPA. Students have to be able to academically, pass the program, but students are also going to have to go into clinical. Students are going to also be faced with all these other life experiences, getting along with other people, dealing with preceptors, dealing with extenuating circumstances, things like COVID and other things. And I think that being in the military totally prepares you for that, especially if you're a younger person with not a lot of life experiences. I should say that would appear to not have a lot of life experiences because of your age. The military gives you all of that. I tell people, when I first joined the military, I basically transitioned at the age of 18 into a man in like 1 year because of the responsibilities they put on you. And our school totally recognizes, what military personnel bring to the table. So I would definitely highlight that. I would also highlight any other life experiences you have, any things that you've gone through, any things you persevered through, even outside of the military, dealing with death in the family, dealing with, friends and family and coworkers, dealing with military things. I think anything that can actually help you to display how you've matured would actually help you. In regards to the program itself and showing how you could be successful in the program, I think that's also showing using your background to demonstrate how you've succeeded in other forms of medicine. Let's say you were a medic, and then you can actually use all those experiences, how you've achieved, how you've succeeded being a medic, how you learn the things you learned given the situations you've been in, whether they be, peacetime or wartime. I think all those things really, really speak to that. Me being a prior military person, when I interview, prior military persons, I don't really delve a lot into that, because one question really tells me that, the person really lets me know. But for people who aren't really familiar with people with a military background, I think you don't want to hide that. You don't want to be bragging or boastful, but you just want to let them know that there's a lot more under the surface. And I think that really goes a long ways.
Great, thank you. And just kind of branching off of everything that Mr. Robertson just said, one of the questions that just came in was, do PA schools consider medical experience in the military as patient care hours? And I'll just go ahead and take this. And Absolutely. Not only is it patient care hours, but incredibly valuable patient care hours, high level patient care hours. And that's really what a lot of programs value. Does anybody else on the panel here want to touch on the question about how to make your application stand out?
I'll say just a little something that, and echo what Dale said, about doing your homework about what programs you're applying to. Because a lot of programs will have something specific. Like on MedX's page, we do have a drop down that says, what makes me a competitive applicant, where we dive into, we really like to see the volunteerism, we like to see sustained volunteerism, work in the community. Different programs kind of have different things like that. So really doing that homework and seeing exactly what programs are looking for that you're applying to is really going to benefit you.
Absolutely. And we'll go ahead and move on to Mr. Jason Erdina over at UNC. And first question for Jason is, are there any accredited PA programs based on years of military medical service?
Accelerated. So I do not believe so. Dr. Barnett maybe has a better answer to that since she's been with PA programs longer. But I don't think so, especially out of 275 programs. But in my opinion, I had over 6 years of medical service experience prior to going to PA school. I did a civilian PA program, and even with the medical experience I had, I still learned it wouldn't have helped me, especially in the foundation phases. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people ask and hope for is some type of bridge program from military to the PA profession. But it seems that PA training is crammed into so much information, crammed into 2 years, that there's essentially no way to make it any shorter, as you alluded to. One of the questions. Go ahead,
let me only because I think it'll be helpful. So to my knowledge, there is none, more so because the accreditation standards really don't allow for it in some ways. You have to be able to demonstrate that the students have met all of the program defined outcomes and how you have assessed them. And so that's probably one of the biggest, reasons. And I can definitely tell you that in the past, I've had nurse practitioners join our PA program and go through the entire program, and really, I think, really blew some of their minds. I've had 4 nurse practitioners in my 27 years that actually went back through our programs. That is just training. So yeah, so the level of experience you have will not, and most of that is really because of accreditation standards.
Sure. And then to quickly answer a couple questions that have come in, and thank you, Dr. Barnett. One of the questions was, do 18 Delta course credits transfer towards PA school credits? And it's a great question. A lot of the 18 Delta folks get really high level training, specifically with anatomy and physiology in the cadaver lab, et cetera. They do count towards, at most schools, towards prerequisite credits, but not credits for actual PA school itself. And then, well, we'll get to the next question a bit later. And we'll go on with Mr. Erdina. And is there a currently, let me try and figure out this question for just a second. Is it possible for an active duty soldier to get accepted to a PA program and attend school while on active duty, then return back to their unit?
I think that to answer this one, there's always that possibility. It'll be program dependent. So I would recommend do your homework, reach out to the programs, ask. For UNC, you have to complete the program within 3 years. So if you deploy for a year, you're down to 2 years. So just keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And then more of kind of a cultural question. Many veterans have tattoos. How are these viewed by PA programs?
That's a good question. I think it's more geared towards the clinical sites where you're in a professional environment. And I know for UNC, especially at UNC hospitals, the dress policy is at least try to have them covered up. But just for our program. While you're in the preclinical phase, we don't view them any differently than someone who didn't have any tattoos.
Thanks, Jason. That was actually a question that came up a couple times, so it's a pretty important topic. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Miss Wendy Elwell Page. And to start with, when in the application cycle is a good time to apply to PA school and why?
I like to say you should apply when your application is the best you can get it. For Duke, we have what I like to call a modified rolling admissions. So no matter when you turn in your application, we're going to read it, we're going to evaluate it. And if we want to interview, you're going to get the interview, no matter when, from day one till the close. So some people may have a course, say, and maybe taking a course in the spring, and they may think, oh, this could help me. This could boost my GPA a little. Wait until you get the grade for that course before you turn in your application. Make your application the best you can before you turn it in.
That's good advice. I think a lot of people think that they have to submit their application the day that CASPA opens. So that's great information. Thanks, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next question is, will the pandemic be taken into account going into the 2022 cycle regarding applicants having lower shadowing hours?
So
period.
For Duke, that's kind of an interesting question because we do not require shadowing. So I would say that we love to see shadowing because shadowing is good for the applicant. Shadowing lets people see what they're getting into and to see if this profession is really what they ultimately want to do. So it's good for you, but we're not going to look at your application and say, oh, they only did one shadowing experience this year versus 2 years ago. Anything you can do for yourself is great. But since there's no requirement, pandemic really is not going to affect that one way or the other with us.
Great. Anyone else on the panel want to chime in?
Yeah, it's the same for MEDEX. It's not a requirement, but it is a recommendation. We strongly urge our applicants to shadow at least one primary care PA and get as much experience with different kinds of clinical areas as well, because we're really, as to echo what Wendy said, looking for folks who have a really strong understanding of what the role of a PA is and what the expectations will be when they transition into the field.
Great, thank you.
We follow the same path at UNC.
Great. And then a question that I actually get a lot in my role as pre-PA advisor. If I did poorly in a course, is it recommended to retake this course to make me more competitive, or what would you advise that this candidate does?
I've been giving a lot of feedback for the last 2 weeks, and that's shaky slope. It just depends. If you feel like you have a very poor foundation in whatever course you did poorly, and let's say general chemistry, if you feel like you got a C and you have no understanding of general chemistry whatsoever, and you barely pulled the C out, yes, of course, retake the course because you need that foundation. But if you got a C and you're pretty comfortable and you're like, oh, I'm okay with chemistry, I'm going to go on, and do something else higher level and harder will help you more, really. So if you can then say, take organic chemistry and do phenomenally well, B, A, whatever, you're going to really, I think, make a much better impression than for us seeing a whole bunch of retaking courses, because you're extending the foundation as opposed to just repeating things over and over and over again and not really learning anything new.
Thanks, I think that's great advice. And if I can, there were a couple questions that have come in the interim, kind of branching off of this topic. One, to go back to shadowing, one person asked if clinical hours from a paramedic program would count towards shadowing. And I don't think so unless it was directly with a PA, and then it would more count towards healthcare hours. And correct me if I'm wrong. And then in addition, what if my prerequisites are older than a program's required prerequisites? Am I required to redo them to apply? And I'll just take this one and I would just say yes. Every program has a hard stop. There are a few out there that do not have any prerequisite expiration dates, but most of them do now. And you would have to retake those certain prerequisites to apply to X program. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to Miss Tovey Blake. Thank you very much, Wendy. So is a bachelor's degree required for all PA programs? Are there any exceptions?
That's a good question. I'm happy to answer, but I would actually like to invite my colleague Dale Robertson to jump in first.
Please.
Question, could you ask the question one more time, Michael?
Absolutely. So is a bachelor's degree required for PA school? And are there any exceptions to this?
Okay. Again, I would do my, Jen, if you don't mind, I'll let Jen tackle that one. Jen, you mind tackling that one? She's our didactic person. I can answer it, but I think Jen would be a definitely better answer. So,
we medics kind of touted that we were the last bachelor school in the nation for many, many years. So I'm assuming that when Tacoma, we graduated our last mixed class last year, I'm thinking that there's no bachelor's programs left. So it means you do have to have a bachelor's degree. And then now they're master's programs.
Absolutely.
So that's an accreditation standard by way. All institutions with PA educational programs had to offer the master's degree starting in January 2020. Was it 2020 or 2021? I think it was 2020.
I think so.
January 2020. Any incoming students or any class that came in as part of an admissions process after January 2020, the institution had a master's degree.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
we were one of the last ones. They had to drag us kicking and screaming. We didn't want to do it. So
just to follow up on your question, Michael, one of the questions that we get asked a lot is about the type. Is there a preferred type of bachelor's degree? And in general, I would say something in the sciences, but have we accepted students from theater arts, business degrees? Absolutely.
Thank you. And then the next question is very, very school specific, but if you can speak in general terms on prerequisites for PA school, what is typically required for PA school?
Sure. So sciences. The most common sciences are anatomy and physiology, biology, chemistry, microbiology, and then English. MEDEX requires 2 English courses, and they must be writing courses, and then statistics, as well as a social sciences course. In terms of GPA, at MEDEX, we require a 2.7 GPA in each prerequisite, which is a B- or greater. Generally, sciences taken in the last 5 to 7 years are considered more favorable. And then I'm not sure about other institutions, but at MEDEX, we look for an overall, or pardon me, a last 90 credit GPA of a minimum of 3.0 or higher. So that's the academic credits, prerequisites. And then we have clinical prerequisites. Not all schools have this. Ours happens to have a minimum 2,000 hour requirement, which is about 1 year of clinical experience. And what we're looking for is experience with direct hands-on patient care, a good breadth of experience, and what level of independent decision-making does the candidate have?
Anybody else want to chime in on this question regarding just general prerequisites?
I'll chime in and concur with everything that Ms. Blake with Ms. Blake said. I think for many programs, it's really looking at their individual prerequisites, because that's the part that really is different. That is really different. Some programs will require anatomy and phys, whereas others may recommend, anatomy and phys, or some may require statistics. And so I think just for all the applicants, just really pay attention to what's required versus what is recommended.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, this is a question that I actually get a lot as well regarding letters of recommendation. Now, most schools require 3 letters of recommendation, but CASPA accepts 5. Is it recommended to submit 5 letters of recommendation?
Not necessarily. I would say quality versus quantity. So make sure your references are going to say something stellar about you. We don't really want to see just satisfactory or okay references. And in terms of MedX, our program emphasizes primary care. And so we would really like to see, ideally, at least one reference from a PA in primary care. And in addition to that, if possible, we would also like to see at least one from a medical doctor that you maybe worked with.
Great, thank you. And since this is such a common question and oftentimes unique to programs, does anybody else want to chime in on this one?
I was just going to mention, Michael, that I don't know about other programs, but you have to think, Jen and I definitely know when it comes around that time, we're going through hundreds of these. I mean, literally hundreds a week we're going through these. So I agree strongly with Toby, is that you want to put your best foot forward, have your best and strongest ones be on there, so we don't have to be sifting through ones that are kind of so-so. So that would just be my suggestion.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, and then mine, and I'm gonna say this pretty strongly, is to really be careful who you pick as a reference, and you should not be picking family members. We've got them, fiancés. I'm telling you, we have gotten them because that is almost a sign. We would look at that as just not really exercising good judgment in the people that you're putting up for. It needs to be a professional reference. So that's just another thing.
That's a great point. Thank you.
And then to piggyback one more thing, make sure the person knows you. Don't go for important people. I've had letters from a senator saying, "Oh, I'm very aware of Miss Smith, and I'm certain that she'll make a wonderful PA." That is not helpful. Not helpful at all.
Thank you, Wendy.
We like to make sure that our students, or our applicants, when they submit these letters of recommendations, that the recommendations really focus on giving us an insight into who you are, and that they know you and can attest to your skills working with patients, working with the team that you're there with. So if you're shadowing with somebody for 10 hours and that's it, and they write you a letter, it's not going to be as strong as with someone that you've actually worked with over and over again and has seen you in that atmosphere.
For sure. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Miss Erickson. And the first question is it still possible to serve in the National Guard while in PA school with duties of 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year?
Absolutely. Of course, some units are going to be different than others. Like my unit, we actually, one of my NCOs is currently also a student in my classroom, so he has to deal with me an awful lot.
How does that dynamic work?
It's good. We run the clinic together at Army, and so we go back here, and he just calls me a different thing. I mean, that's all it really changes. But so it can be done. But what a lot of units will do is they'll do what's called quarterly drilling, which means you don't go to drill January, February, March, but then in April at a spring break or a break in school, you come in and do all those days back to back. And a lot of units will allow you to do that, especially if they understand that you're in PA school, not like nursing assistant school. Like this is something where you can't just take a break. So really talking with your command and having them understand what you're doing with school, what the PA means, And seeing also if you can transfer to, every state has something called a med det or a medical command. If you can transfer to that, it's all medical people, so they understand it. Almost everyone there is doing something with education, and so a lot of different units are more cognizant of the time commitment that you'll have. Long answer to a short question, sorry, but absolutely.
No, absolutely, that was perfect. I think you're the right person to speak on that as well.
Yeah, I did it myself, and right over the deployment, actually, I stayed home from the deployment to finish PA school. So a lot of places are really good at being flexible.
Would you say commands specifically in those medical units value those students that are the PA students that are still serving, knowing that they will then be an asset to that unit when they graduate?
Yes. PA retention is down in the reserves and National Guard nationwide because we make less money when we're there. That's usually how it shakes out in the end, or it's our only time off, and we already work 60 hours a week. And so a lot of command understands that we want this retention to stay, and so they're usually pretty flexible, but you just kind of have to be a little careful, because sometimes if you're one of those line medics out there in a line unit, they might not understand the position fully. So fully really explaining it to them and what the school looks like, and showing them even the calendar of the school, and showing that there's not a summer off. It doesn't work that way for a lot of programs. Will really, really help you in the long run.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then branching off of that, do PA schools accept my military training for prerequisites or for credit?
I think most programs will take your joint service training transcript. That's what the word is. They'll take your transcript. Some of them will use them for prereqs. I know they don't count for any, skipping any classes or any courses within the program. But we also, like at medics, we use the ACE military guide, and that kind of looks at what your job is, your MOS or whatever they call it in other branches. They look kind of see what your job really means. If you say, I'm a healthcare specialist, that might not mean something to someone that isn't familiar with Army medicine. That's like, oh no, that's the same as a combat medic. It's the same certification you get at the end. It's just we call it different things depending on where you're serving. So that's really beneficial for us to use those military guides as well. Sometimes it'll help us also look and see kind of the classes you've already taken, which prereqs they should count for. So we make sure we don't accidentally count something in the wrong category, and then the actual university doesn't agree with us.
Absolutely.
There might be a better answer from someone in admissions, though.
For sure. I'm gonna kind of open this one up here.
Or not.
That's okay.
Jennifer nailed it. Thank you so much.
No, you did. Truly nailed it.
Thank you.
The next question is very general in nature. Would you mind briefly explaining what the Yellow Ribbon program is?
Yes, Yellow Ribbon programs. Oh, best thing out there if you ask me. Pretty much post 9/11 GI Bill helped a lot of people go to school. It gave us more money, essentially. If you deployed for 90 days or greater on Title 10 orders, you had a separate pot of GI Bill money. Around the same time, they realized that that even with the GI Bill, that post 9/11 GI Bill, a lot of people still couldn't afford school. And so the Yellow Ribbon program, it allows us to cut your tuition down. Now, some private schools allow it, some public schools allow it, but essentially some schools cut your tuition directly in half, and that's what you pay. So it just kind of depends on each school, making sure you look at them and see if they're a participant in the Yellow Ribbon program. But also looking at your PA program. So your PA program sometimes is part of the university, but you don't pay the university tuition. You actually pay a tuition to the PA program. So if the university is a Yellow Ribbon program, that doesn't necessarily mean that the PA program is. You really have to do some research on that or your homework on that before you apply. Because if that reduction in tuition is the only way you're going to school, then you're really going to want to look into it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to move on to Miss Tracy Velez. And forgive me, Tracy, am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
So the first question here is previous medical experience required for PA school? And what type of medical experience is valued by PA programs?
So I would say most programs want to see that you have some sort of medical experience behind you. Some, we've touched on this a little bit earlier, but some have certain thresholds that you must meet. At UNC, we have 1,000 hours that we require for application. So you'll want to do your homework and look at your individual programs to figure out whether they require a particular threshold or not. I always suggest to those who I talk to get out your spreadsheets, whether it's Google, Excel, what have you, write down all the different programs that you want to go to or that you're interested in, and then start lining up all the different requirements they have so that you can check off those boxes as you go along and you're getting ready to apply. But definitely have that as one of the criteria that you look at. The type of medical experience, I think we like to see the direct hands-on patient care, as Toby said earlier. We really want to see that direct human contact and getting your hands on that patient, kind of assessing their condition or providing some sort of treatment on that patient, whether it be behavioral medicine or in the primary care setting, but just having that one-on-one interactions with those patients and kind of getting to talk to them and relate to them and do those kind of assessments, whether it's taking vital signs or, you know, behavioral therapy type kind of modifications. That's kind of what we're looking for when we talk about direct hands-on patient care.
Great, thank you. And if I can personally branch off of this for just a moment, you know, I'd like to say for all the veterans out there is don't sell yourself short on patient care hours. I think a lot of times, for example, let's just say a combat medic on a year-long deployment, they say, okay, well, I really only had my hands on a patient for maybe 1 hour each day. No, you were on an 8-hour duty day. As a medic, you were responsible for people's lives during that time, which is akin to a civilian paramedic. So don't sell yourself short. And you're absolutely right. A lot of programs hover kind of around that 1,000-hour mark. And then oftentimes, to be really competitive, a lot of programs and a lot of people are coming in with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours. So don't sell yourself short. You have those hours. You've done the work. Just don't sell yourself short. Sorry to put my 2 cents in there, Tracy. So the next question is, what are some things to include in my admissions packet besides what a school lists on their website?
So particularly talking about, you know, our veteran applicants, we do like to see if you have any credits behind you with your JST. We do like to look at that. We also like to see your DD-214 here at UNC, just so we can kind of get an idea of what your MOS or equivalent was, so that we can give you the proper credit for any background experiences that you have had.
Great. Sorry, I'm trying to bounce back and forth between the chat and the general section. So in general, does it matter how long ago my patient care hours were accumulated?
I'm going to take a wild shot at what maybe everyone else is thinking. I can't speak for all the other programs. For our program, we like to see that it was very recent, maybe not yesterday per se, but you could have like a small gap, but we want to have an explanation maybe as to why there was a gap between applying. If you stopped doing experiences like 10 years ago, that kind of puts up a little bit of a red flag, I think, for us. And we want to know more about why there was that gap and why the sudden interest in going back to this field. So for us, I think we like to see very recent experiences, and I would assume other programs would as well, but others can certainly chime in on that.
Absolutely, please. I'll open it up. Just once again, the question was, does it matter how long ago my patient care hours were accumulated? I think you did an excellent job answering that, Tracy. Thank you. And we had one of our panel members not able to make it this evening, so I'm going to go ahead and take these ones here. So the first question is, can I apply with a non-science bachelor's degree? And I think we touched on this quite a bit earlier, so I'm just going to keep this very brief and say the answer is yes. As long as you complete the prerequisites, and typically some more science classes above and beyond the prerequisites. And absolutely, theater, English, whatever you would like it to be, as long as you meet those prerequisites, and to be competitive, a few more than the basic requirements. And the next question is, which we actually had a question in the chat as well. I'm a veteran with a non-medical MOS. How do I gain my patient care hours? And is my service still valued like those with medical experience in the military? And absolutely. Not only does the military give people high value medical experience, but as Dale alluded to before, it makes you grow as a person. It brings a sense of maturity to the classroom. So just because you didn't serve in a medical specialty in the service does not mean your service is not valued. It absolutely is, and it's sought out by programs around the country. And I don't know if I'm certain everyone feels the same way, or else they wouldn't be on this call. So I don't even think we need to open it up to everyone else. And now that brings us to Mr. Sean Reyes. So the first question is, I'm currently on active duty and a few years away from application. What are some things I can do now to make myself more competitive?
So this is one that someone on admissions might want to piggyback. I know what I did was take more classes, like online, community college, whatever you can. But you can also work on your hours, like healthcare hours if you're non-med MOS, shadowing hours, and then volunteer work is like the most important thing. So definitely focus on that.
Absolutely. And how, just from a personal standpoint, how did you manage to gain volunteer hours and do all that stuff while on active duty with all these responsibilities during your duty time?
I had a little bit of a gap, like between getting out and going to school. But when I was active, I volunteered a lot with the Boy Scouts and like volunteer fire department and churches.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on ways to make a candidate more competitive when they have a few years out from application, especially when they're so busy with active duty.
I'm a little worried my bias will show a little bit, but I like to see longevity. I like to see that. I don't care if you did 100 hours in 3 weeks. I'd rather would see you do 1 or 2 hours every Sunday somewhere for a good amount of time. That just shows that you are embedded in a community, you connect with the community, especially if you're applying to a program within that community, because I want you to go back to them when you're done. I'd rather see that kind of long-term commitment than just see a bunch of hours all at once and you never ever go back there. But that's, again, that's my bias.
Absolutely, that's some great advice. And Sean, I think this is something that you can certainly speak to most recently. I think all of us can to a certain extent, but I think you're the most recent here. And what is the pace like in comparison to undergrad? The pace of PA school specifically?
So the didactic pace specifically is pretty intense. It's like a lot. Compared to undergrad, it's probably if you had a full load, but it was all science classes with labs. And so like you're busy all the time. It's like 8 hours of lecture and then studying. After that, when you get into the clinical, it's a little bit more like normal. Like you work like a 40, 60, maybe a few more hours a week, and then you're studying on your off time. So that's more palatable.
Great. And then the last question, this is more of a social kind of question. Do veterans, and this is your experience, do veterans tend to kind of fit in with their non-veteran classmates, or do they tend to stick to themselves in the corner?
I mean, I think the short answer is, yeah, you're going to fit in. Like it's all normal people. There's, the obvious kind of like social and political demographics of veterans versus, non-veterans or PA students is vastly different, but there's never any sort of like prejudice against someone specifically because of their status as a veteran.
Great. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it. And then one question that just came in the chat. So if you aren't and I'm just going to open this one up to the group. If you aren't satisfied with your GRE score, but you feel that the rest of your application is strong, should you go ahead and apply now and update a new score, or wait until you've retaken the GRE? And this is once again for anyone who feels comfortable answering this question.
I think the great thing about being able to apply in CASPA is that they do allow you to continue to submit GRE scores past submission of your application. So if you do plan on retaking the GRE, you can go ahead and submit the current scores you have and then resubmit new scores to the programs that you're applying to before their admissions deadlines.
Great, thank you. And then we're going to take a break here in just a moment. But I think probably a good point, since this is kind of such a small group at the moment, if there's anybody in the audience that has a question that they'd like answered that hasn't been asked or answered already, please go ahead. And then after our break, we're going to go ahead and discuss school-specific questions and then wrap up after that. So I'll give it just a moment to see if any questions come in, and then we'll take a break if not. Okay, so forgive me, this is a bit of a paragraph. I unfortunately drag a very, very low GPA from my first time in college. I took about a 5-year gap before deciding to pursue PA school. By the time I complete my prerequisites, it will be around 7 to 8 years since I dropped out of college with a low GPA. Assuming I graduate and complete my prerequisites with a good GPA this time around, and assuming I have to submit all of my academic transcripts, will that 5-year gap be taken into consideration despite it affecting my overall GPA?
I will say something real quick if you want, because I was you. I was dropped out of, actually, it's not true. They asked me to leave. And I joined the Army after that. I didn't know what to do next. And I joined the Army and I just wasn't mature enough for school. And I drug around this like 2.17 GPA or something. And when I came back, I was a grown up now. You know, you mature so fast in the military. And I just started crushing all my prereqs, and medics is one of those programs. I don't know if all of them are like that, but we look at that 90 credit GPA and we really look at who you've grown into and who you've become versus who you started when you were first born into the adult world. Like, not most of us aren't ready to be a full adult at that time. So there is hope. There's absolutely hope.
And just to piggyback and kind of put another personal story in here, I fall in that same boat as Jennifer as well. My freshman year of college was abysmal. And then I joined the military, got my head on straight, came back and crushed the rest of undergrad. And I truly credit the military with getting my head on straight and getting me in the right direction. Now, yes, when you average that all together, that first year really dragged me down. But looking at what I did after the military is certainly what I credit with getting into PA school.
Hey, Michael, I wanted to say too that we love Jen. And so we love people like that too. Medics definitely looks at the person and they don't focus so hard on the GPA. So, and Jen know when we review all these applications, we look at what's happened. These are things that we debate. We look at what the applicant has done in like the last couple of years. So they struggled all this time, and in this last few years, they've done all this volunteer work. There you go, shows that grit. And they've done all this volunteer work, and we see that, wow, they had this GPA in the last classes they took over the last so many years. They've been like a 3.2 or higher. They're welcome. And then having that military background too, it really weighs a lot. So
absolutely appreciate it. All right, guys. So the way this section is going to go is, excuse me, I will go ahead and ask the question, and this is more school specific details. So each school will get a turn to go. And if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to go each time in order. MEDEX, UNC, then Duke, just so we have a distinct order each time. And each question will be very brief, few seconds each question. We can elaborate a little bit if necessary. And I'd like to go ahead and just start. And the first question will be, what is your current class size? And are there any plans to increase the class size? And we'll go ahead and start with medics.
So our incoming class has 164 students spread across 5 different campuses. And we do have some plans to grow that to about 170 over the next year or two.
Great.
Can I interject a question here, Toby? So is Hawaii one of those campuses?
Yes, it is.
I
Kona.
thought.
Can I go back to PA school? All right, thank you. UNC?
So we have a class size of 20, and we have no plans at this time to increase.
Great. And Dr. Barnett, would you like to take this one?
Wendy, help yourself. Jump on in.
Sure, we have a class of 90 and I don't think we will be increasing anytime soon.
Great, thank you, everyone. And then, do you participate in the Yellow Ribbon program?
Shucks, we don't. But Toby and I were just talking about this the other day, how we really would like to.
Great. UNC?
We do at UNC. Mhm.
All right. And then Duke?
Feel free to answer all the Duke questions. I'm just here, but
Okay.
of course I can answer them all, but I want to be very respectful of your time joining us tonight.
Thank you. So Duke does participate in Yellow Ribbon, but the Yellow Ribbon is dispersed throughout the entire School of Medicine, and there's very, very, very few opportunities. So it's pretty hard to get. Not impossible.
And the numbers seem to change every year too.
They do.
And this next question is more of a pandemic type question, similar to the virtual interviews. Are you going back to in-person learning, or will it remain virtual? And here's me inserting my own 2 cents, or a hybrid combination.
Lots of discussion on that topic right now. Because of the pandemic, we're hopefully going back hybrid, starting in fall quarter, but Washington State, we're in the news, we're backing up another phase, it seems like every day. So, but one big thing for us is whatever the lowest ability is for one of our 5 campuses is what we all do, or else it's not equitable education across all 5 campuses.
For UNC, just like everyone else, there's a lot of discussion going on. The undergraduates going back in person, but we're probably maybe go back to a hybrid, some virtual, some in person.
So we've been very fortunate, thanks to our wonderful program director advocating for us with the School of Medicine, to have kept the most valuable in-person things alive. So we still kept our cadaver lab, we still kept our physical diagnosis and counseling, and a lot of our labs. We did go to recorded for everything else. We were at one point a school who was entirely in person. I think that we will probably to some degree remain at the more hybrid level, probably for the unforeseeable future.
All right. And then are lectures recorded, for example, to listen to afterwards or review at home?
Y'all can interrupt me if I keep answering, but we're hoping actually to consider going forward in more of a hybrid situation where lectures are recorded, and then in the classroom is more critical thinking, group work, that kind of thing. But as of right now, virtual everything is pretty much recorded, and then only hands-on stuff is happening in courses that have to happen. I don't think many in the program plan to go back to a complete passive lecturing situation in the future.
For UNC, most of our courses and classes are recorded, so you can listen back.
Great.
And academic, I would say ours are as well. But that did not used to be the case. It's pretty new for us.
Thank you. And then in what ways do you support veterans who are applying to or admitted to your program?
I'll go again. For for medics, first, admissions does a really good job of making sure that every veteran applicant, their application is looked at by at least one faculty member who is a veteran, who understands what everything means. So all of our applications are looked at by 2 faculty members, but they make sure at least one faculty member is a veteran for all the veterans. And then in the didactic year, you have an academic advisor, a faculty member at your campus, and we try to match, as much as possible, match up the veteran students with a veteran faculty advisor as well.
The University of Washington also has a Veterans Benefits Office to help with forms, your GI benefits. The Student Services team in MedX helps the students with scholarship forms and quarterly enrollment forms.
Great. UNC?
So at UNC, we do have our Veterans Resource Center on campus, which is it's kind of a safe haven place for our veteran students, so they can go there, hang out, do homework, get resources for advising, tutoring services, and all of that jazz. And that's fairly close to the medical side of campus. It's just across the main street from the main hospital here. So we have that, and then in addition to all of the other resources that we have for all of our other students as well.
Great. And then Sean, since you are a current student veteran, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I know when you apply, you get a like a waiver on your supplemental application fee. Once you're admitted, there is a Veterans Resource Center. They'll like hook you up with verification for like GI Bill and stuff. You have Mike here that's like the veteran liaison, and he's always helpful. And then you get an alumni mentor that you can just like talk to about anything. And then you also get a student mentor that's typically a veteran. So there's a lot.
All right, thank you. And then, excuse me, what do you do in your program to support students who are struggling or failing?
So in MedX, we start with as soon as you score less than a satisfactory score on your first exam, we immediately are enrolled into a student support course, and we put you into tutoring as well. And we have assigned tutors that are paid by the program. Usually they're all PA graduates. But we really track you very closely. Your academic advisor is involved. We meet monthly to talk about our students that are struggling a little bit academically as well. See if there's anything better that we can do for them. I think that's it, unless you two have anything to add to that.
Yeah, and me too, our one of our other APDs, she also monitors your PAEA scores and the scores on your on the major exams that we give. And then if you fall any kind of way where you're where you need tutoring there, they try and catch you sooner than later. So
yeah, we have an entire department just dedicated to with faculty and everything, just dedicated to student support like that.
That's great. UNC?
So we offer advisors to all of our students, and they meet with them again when, just like at MedX, when they receive unsatisfactory scores, and then they devise individual learning plans with that student to capture the content and material that they may be missing, and devise plans on how to catch up and get that content in a timely fashion to be able to move forward. In addition to that, we have several different tutoring services at the School of Medicine at the higher level, where we can send our students for additional tutoring outside of the program for assistance. So we have those resources available for our students.
Awesome, thank you.
For Duke, I know we have like this awesome student sport thing, kind of the standard stuff. I know they come in like orientation week. You'll like talk with them. They'll give you study tips and stuff, and then you can meet with them later on. So that's kind of good to like get ahead of it. And then you also have the advisor meetings, which are actually great. You meet with them, I think like once a month, and the advisors like track everything, and they can like set up plans and like refer you to the other services as well.
Awesome, thanks, Sean. Anyone else want to chime in on this section? All right, so we have about 6 questions left. We're almost there. This will end a bit early tonight. So the next question here is, does your program offer scholarships for military?
We offer one military scholarship for each didactic cohort. I believe it is $1,000, and it was dedicated to a gentleman who, after 23 years of service in the Army as an 18D Special Forces medic, joined MEDEX Seattle Class 41 in 2009.
At UNC, we have 2 different scholarship programs that we have here, and it's all depending on funding availability each year. But they have the opportunity to apply pretty much every semester.
Great. And then Wendy?
At Duke, we do not have any specific veteran scholarships per se. We do have some opportunity for a scholarship called our Hamilton Carter Scholarship. And that's about 10 scholarships of, I believe, 10,000 each. Is that right, Jackie?
So we do, for both years, it ends up being 15 scholarship at 10,000 each, so 250.
15.
That, and then we have the General Scholarship Fund, which is 22 scholarships at 5,000. And then we have a new scholarship that offers for those students a really strong match to admission that's federal, that comes directly from the feds, and that's a $40,000 scholarship, and we do 10 of those.
Thank you, guys. And on top of the, well, it's small fries, waived application, supplemental application fees as well.
Does your health services program scholarship, I think that's another one that many do, the HPS, if I'm saying it right, HSPS, that's another scholarship that's out there.
So are the Veteran Caucus scholarships as well. So don't forget those.
For sure, absolutely. Now, does your program accept the joint service transcripts?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes.
Yes, across the board. And is it required to be on campus at your program? I assume they mean full-time on campus.
Absolutely. We have there's just so much, because it's competency based, there's just so much hands-on and group learning and interacting, and I call it the buzz. When you walk in the classroom, everyone's buzzing together. You miss that if people aren't there in person. So normally, yes, we're in person 5 days a week at MEDEX.
We echo that sentiment at UNC. We require our students to be on campus, especially even in the hybrid, even though you're at home right now through the pandemic. We do require our students to come to campus. I believe it's twice a week now.
And I echo that as well. We do want our students here. There is a lot of valuable learning that usually goes on in the classroom, hands-on stuff you just can't capture if you're not in the classroom, normally anyway.
Absolutely. And if I can insert another personal anecdote here, I oftentimes, not to take anything away from any of the lecturers, which were wonderful, but I think I learned just as much, if not more, from the small groups and just being around my other classmates when discussing things after hours, on breaks, etc. Even certain things that you didn't think of during the lectures or you didn't pick up on. 3 questions left, almost there. Do veterans qualify for in-state tuition at your program?
Absolutely. And that's regardless of whichever campus the student ends up at.
Great.
Ours is dependent. If you fall into the Choice Act status, then you will get the in-state tuition rate. However, you are still considered a non-resident. If you are coming from out of state for more than 2 years ago from being separated, then you are not considered an in-state resident, and you will have to pay out-of-state tuition.
At Duke, we have one tuition across the board. We do not charge in-state versus out-of-state.
Okay. And then how many prerequisites can an applicant have outstanding at the time of application?
Theoretically all. But with that being said, the application would not move forwards past admissions to the faculty holistic review phase. So if an applicant does want to apply with the courses that are in progress, instead of entering their GPA, they would just put an IP for in progress. And then as soon as the course is done, they would update it on their application and submit their transcript directly to our program. Excuse me.
At UNC, we allow two prerequisite courses to be in progress, but we must have final grades for those courses by the application deadline.
Okay.
Similar to UNC, we will allow 2 outstanding that must be finished no later than the end of fall semester. So we give you a teeny bit longer.
Thanks, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
The last question, how many veterans do you average per class? And how many were accepted this recent cycle?
So our most recent cycle, we had a total pool overall of approximately 1,800 applicants. Out of that, there were about 130 veterans. 44 of those got interviewed, and then 27 were accepted into the class of our 164. So overall percentage for the entire program is 16%. If we look at the breakdown per campus, at our Seattle campus, we're at 8%. Tacoma is at 19%. Spokane is at 16%. Anchorage is 21%. And our newest Kona campus is at 29%.
Wow, it's impressive.
Yeah.
So at UNC this past cohort, we had 1 applicant that we did accept and decided not to come. So we actually have no matriculated veterans this year for this cohort that we just received. But typically we have about, on average, about 3 each class. So that equals to about 15% overall.
Great, thank you. Wendy, do you want to tackle
So in the last 5 years, oh, I've frozen. Can you still hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay, I froze on my end. In the last 5 years, we've had between 4 and 6-ish. This year, we're very, very happy to report that we have 10 in the upcoming class. So 10 out of the 90 students.
Great. And that was the last pre-submitted question. I do have one here that is in the group chat, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it aloud, although everyone can see it. I'm retiring from the Air Force after 22 years as an independent duty medic. I'm looking to finish up my BS in early 2022. I'll be using my post 9/11 GI Bill to apply to PA school. How will I translate my 22-year service experience as hands-on patient care when I leave the military and possibly only attend school? Will that place me at a disadvantage? Anybody want to tackle that one?
Sounds like a good applicant. You applying to medics?
That sounds great.
Question, was the question just more so that concern about that 5-year gap of not being in school? Was that?
I think because we previously discussed that having very recent hands-on patient care experience is highly valued. And I think the question is getting at the gap in patient care experience, because it sounds like this person will be transitioning from service and to become a full-time student before application. So will therefore have a gap in patient care hours.
So I think that will probably be something to just highlight in the application, in the personal statement, sacrifices they're making to get back to school, and sort of. So I think that's where they really would need to, to do that, and probably without even add, because we really didn't talk a lot about that. That personal statement, I think, is the best place for people to really highlight so many of the things that we've talked about today. Military experience, grades, healthcare, the grit, things that really demonstrate that. I think you really, the really purpose, because for most of us, you look at so many applicants on paper, and for the most part, they're all good. For the most part, they're all good, the same. But what's really going to separate you? And I think that personal statement is where you can really be your authentic self and really align yourself with the program's mission, why PA, why at this time. And so I would say to use that opportunity to really highlight, some of what this person is saying, and really talk a little bit about that 5-year gap, and some of the sacrifices they're making to get back to school, to do this. So that would be how a suggestion that I would have.
I think that's a great answer. And if you don't mind, I think, Jackie, you gave a great segue to something we really didn't touch on here. And I think a good way to close might be discussing the personal statement. It's a really important aspect of the application process. And one thing that I usually advise to folks is tell your story, tell a story. Don't just simply recite your CV in paragraph form. Admissions committees like to hear that story, to make you stand out. And I'd love to hear other folks' opinion on what they like to see in a personal statement.
I like to see patient stories. I want to see how you're interacting with your patient. It really brings out your compassion and your passion better than just, as you say, reciting your CV over and over again. And when I do counseling, I always say, leave them wanting more, make me want to meet you. Make that story so great that I just love you. And I just want to meet you so much because of your dedication to people.
We encourage applicants to use that opportunity to tell us, okay, we see everything about you on paper, your grades, your experiences, but now's the time for you to tell us, okay, you get into PA school, now what are you going to do with it? Tell us what your future aspirations, what your goals are, how is this going to help you get to the next level, to the next step of where you are trying to go? What are your goals? And let's see if we can figure out if our goals are going to help you reach your goals, because that's where you need to find that connection between you and your program and figure out if that's the right program for you, because we're all different and we all have different goals in what we're trying to achieve, and you need to see if you fit, and we need to see if you fit with us as well.
That's wonderful advice.
Yeah, I always say to answer my three whys are why now, why PA, and why MedX is what I like to know in your MedX statement. Because I want to make sure that you get our program. If you're looking for a surgical PA program, we're not the place for you. But if you want to good primary care program's been around a while, it's got some longevity, then we're here for you. But you gotta like the rain, unless you go to Kona. So.
Actually, I think Kona gets more rain than Seattle.
It's tolerable rain though.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to briefly open this up to see if there are any more outstanding questions amongst the participants. And we'll give it about 30 seconds or so to see if any more questions come in. But I think we covered the gamut tonight.
Hello.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi. My name's Antoine. I just finished my workday, and I totally missed out on most of what was talked about. If you want to get offline and maybe chat about some of the things that I missed, I would appreciate that. Or if you would like to just recap, it would be fine, but I want to wait on what other people have to say as well.
Sure. So good news is this is actively being recorded and will be posted online afterwards. And I'd be happy to send you a direct link to that as well, so you can review it also. So you didn't essentially miss anything.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
Of course. Another question that just came in. Does being a uniformed victims advocate count towards patient care experience? And I'm not certain of the answer to that. Someone from our admissions.
I think it would depend. I think we'd need to know exactly what you're doing. In order, there's a lot of gray areas out there. When there's a gray area like that, I often say, please send me a job description. And then a lot of us get online and talk and then figure it out. So I'd need to see a job description.
Great, thank you.
So I have a really quick question. I was a double major dual enrollment student with the C3 program at Durham Tech and NC State. I dropped out after my first semester, so I was in my second semester to join the U.S. Army. I'm now in a special operations medic course. I'm wondering what I can do now as far as undergrad that would help me get a better application. Like, what would make me look like an awesome applicant?
Going through SOCM school. That'll certainly set you apart. Number one. So you're doing the work. We value, all PA programs value military medical experience because you're autonomous, you're practicing in austere environments. But when it comes to the special operations combat medic, that's even above and beyond the traditional combat medic role, like I was myself. So that value in and of itself or that experience is certainly highly valued across the board at all PA programs. In addition to that, I would say, since it sounds like you still have to complete majority of undergrad, I'm not certain how long your service is going to be, but do it in increments that you feel you would be successful in. Don't take too much on when you already have a lot during the day, and certainly utilize tuition assistance so the military will pay for your prerequisite courses and save the big bulk of your GI bill for PA school. That's the general advice I have for your specific situation. I don't know if anybody else would like to chime in.
I think that's great advice.
All right, last call for questions. Okay, question about those transitions to the Guard. Yes, you can still actively drill while in school. And as Jennifer alluded to before, some units will stack your drill weekends to your spring break or other breaks in your school schedule. It all depends on your specific command. And then another question, are online courses seen as less competitive than traditional in-person courses?
Not at MedX. We just look for if the the institution is a regionally accredited institution.
I second that at UNC.
Ditto.
And then Gabriel has a good question here that I actually get this question from folks a lot. How do I register or keep track of patient care hours? And what proof does your program require?
So at UNC, we have a form on our website. It's our patient verification form. And basically what you write on there is where you had your experience, what are the number of hours, and you kind of list out some of your duties. And then you have a supervisor sign off on that form. And you can collect those throughout. And then when you go to apply on CASPA, you submit them for our review.
Right. Okay. Last call for questions. All right. And for any of the participants, if you have any questions afterwards, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. You have my email on the link that was sent out. I want to sincerely thank all of the panelists for taking the time out of their evening to participate in this event. Our goal is to post this publicly, so it's available for people to watch after this, and for folks that were not able to attend this evening. So unless there are any other questions, I sincerely thank each of you and want to wish you a great evening.
Yes, thank you so much. From all of our programs, from the PA profession, and definitely speak from the heart. We value our veterans. We value everything that you bring, the grit, the life experience, the maturity, the academics, and hope that we can continue to help and support all of you all as you look toward your goals of becoming a PA. Please feel free to reach out and let us know how we can continue to support you. All the panelists, thank you so much for all your work, for all you do every single day to promote students in this profession across your programs, and to further this to further our profession. It's still a very young profession at only 50-something plus years old. So thank everyone for their work and much appreciated.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett. Have a great night, everyone.
Have a great night.